No, want to do.
I'm just, I'm just agreeing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
A year ago, so I don't know how you go from band director to cop, but whatever.
It's like directing traffic.
Yes, it's still in charge, right? The one laying down the law.
Hello? Hello? Linda.
Good evening. Welcome to the August 18th, 2022 meeting of Northampton County Council. I've asked Tara Zirinsky to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Zimbo, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Brown. Mr. Kuzic.
Present.
Mr. Giovanni.
Present.
Mr. Gofredo.
Here.
Mr. Heckman.
Here.
Mr. Lott.
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Here.
Ms. Zirinsky.
here.
All present with Mr. Heckman and Mr. Lott on the phone.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 4th, 2022?
Motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or amendments? Motion passes. Courtesy of the floor, I have one name. Process is, you get at least 5 minutes, and Armando Moritz Chapaquelin.
We're getting better.
It got better, yeah. Oh, I'm not that tall, so
It's also my eyesight, I apologize.
it's okay. It's a very long name. I'm just glad I don't have to repeat it because that'd be my 5 minutes. Good evening, council members. Let me just start off by apologizing. As a resident of Wilson Borough, I'm ashamed, though not all that surprised by the conduct that we saw last week. While it doesn't speak, while this individual, the borough solicitor, does speak for Wilson Borough Council, I assure you he doesn't speak for Wilson Borough itself. As I mentioned, I've spoken with many residents over the last few weeks on the Dixie Cup LRTA, and while we don't agree, we're all able to have a civil and respectful conversation, and I think we can all agree that that civility should extend to this space. I'm reminded of my last meeting at the Wilson Borough Council, where a council member, the same one who told me to, quote, sit my butt down and listen, end quote, told me to show some respect before starting my testimony. After that meeting, I thought I was an outlier for thinking that respect is earned, not freely given. Thankfully, my conversations with neighbors made it clear that I was not an outlier, that good people can disagree and still demonstrate respect for each other. I only wish such people spoke on behalf of the Borough Council. Only then could our elected officials begin to suggest that they speak on behalf of our community. All this being said, I did want to respond to a few of the points that were made 2 weeks ago. Councilmember Brown had actually asked me a question about whether or not I would support the proposed LRTA resolution if the end use was something that I personally wanted. And while I took some time to unpack that question, the short answer, to be perfectly clear, is no. As was discussed in the April 4th hearing, the LRTA that the Borough Council and School Board passed was overly generous, and unlike any LRTA this body has considered previously. That LRTA was flawed, not because of the people drafting it, but because of the LRTA language itself. As was pointed out, a benefit that typically extends for 10 years could, in the tabled LRTA, potentially extend for 14 years. That dramatic increase was never explained or justified by anyone. And as such, it does not deserve to pass, and I continue to be firmly opposed to it. I appreciate Councilmember Brown's question, though, because it highlights a challenge that has unfortunately defined the nature of this LRTA debate. As some members indicated at the last hearing, the county and the county council does not directly control zoning uses. Municipalities do. However, when municipalities are unable to engage in honest or even respectful conversation on zoning, land use, or potential development, the conversation necessarily must occur somewhere. Otherwise, residents will justifiably feel alienated by their local officials. I would gladly engage in this dialogue with the Wilson Borough. However, Mr. Margle's outburst and the account that I shared with you 2 weeks ago about how council had acted when this question was before them demonstrates why I'm raising those issues here. Because the local municipality is either incapable or unwilling to engage in a respectful dialogue. Again, I apologize that all this is coming to a head here and, at the last step of the LRTA process, but it just goes to show how little scrutiny this policy has garnered at the other taxing authorities. And as always, I appreciate your time. I look forward to your questions later this evening, and I look forward to tonight's public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to courtesy of the floor? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Mr. McClure, do you have a report this evening?
I do, just very briefly, Madam President. Ms. Zirinsky and I were fulfilling our obligations of the Executive Board of the Planning Commission today, and it occurred to me that tonight is emblematic of what we're trying to accomplish in Northampton County, especially as we push back against warehouse proliferation, increased truck traffic, and the air pollution that is causing our asthma rates to skyrocket, especially amongst our children. And let me explain. Today, while we were discussing the budget request from the Planning Commission, we were going through some of the numbers, and we've invested about $250,000 in planning for our communities so that they can prepare to have the zoning in place necessary to have the industrial located where industrial should be located and limit the number of warehouses that will be sited in our municipalities. And we'll have a major project done by the end of this year, our freight study with the Planning Commission, where we hope to have model ordinances drafted that all of our municipalities can take and add to their zoning ordinances. Tonight, you're going to consider the Banarsik Preserve, our 22nd county park, which will take us to 3,600 acres of natural areas preserved since 2006. It will take us to 333 acres of county parkland preserved since 2018. And finally, you will be considering and finally killing a LERTA that was initially designed for a warehouse, last mile logistics euphemistically, but a warehouse that would add to additional truck traffic and the air pollution I talked about with respect to these asthma rates. So tonight is actually a continuation and a demarcation point moving forward when we finally turn the tide with respect to warehouse proliferation. I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. McClure? No. Thank you. Moving into old business, we have a public hearing of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance by Northampton County Council concurring with the Borough of Wilson and the Wilson Area School District and providing for property tax exemption for certain properties in the Borough of Wilson to be listed as deteriorated property as defined in the Borough of Wilson Resolution Number 1269 pursuant to Act 76 of 1977 of the General Assembly of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as amended. Messrs. Myers and Cusick introduced this ordinance at the August 4th, 2022 meeting. Are there any questions or comments from the public? You can approach if you have questions or comments.
My name is Joseph Reapman. I represent Wilson Park LTD, which is the owner of the Dixie Cup building in Wilson Borough. I've been before this council before. Just want to indicate.
Could you pull the mic down? I'm having a hard time.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Plus for the folks on the phones, it's hard sometimes.
The basic reason that I wanted to get up and speak at this point in this conversation is that this is an existing building. It's not building out a green property, green land, farmland. It is something that exists. It has been used as an industrial manufacturing, distribution, warehouse for over 100 years. It's where Dixie Cups were made. And they were shipped out from that site. So trucks had to ship them out. We operated it for about 25 years as a third-party logistics facility. The maximum number of trucks we had at any one time using that facility was probably 50 or 60 a day over a 24-hour period. It's not a proliferation of a big warehouse of hundreds of trucks or million square feet. We are under the current zoning in Wilson Borough, warehousing, industrial uses, mixed uses, residential uses are all permitted under the Wilson Borough zoning. The LERTA is designed, as I'm sure your solicitor has indicated to you, based on state law, to take a property that is underutilized and/or deteriorated and encourage investment in order to bring that property back to an asset to the community and as a future tax-paying piece of property. It goes to the property and not necessarily to a developer or necessarily to a developer. If there's any questions that anybody would like to ask, I'm more than happy to answer them concerning the property, concerning the benefit that LERTA will provide as we try to find a developer who is interested and willing and capable of restoring that property to what it needs to be in this community. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council? Are there any questions from the gentleman on the phone?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to?
I have one question.
Yes, Tara, sorry.
I have a question for Mr. Reapman. Yeah. When was the last time, approximately, that you made a repair on this building?
Well, we repaired within the last year a section of the building. We put new windows in. We did a fire suppression system and installed, according to a certificate of occupancy that was issued on a temporary basis to a tenant that we had. So we had to spend a substantial sum of money to upgrade the fire suppression system in the building. It's a big building, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that building, and it's difficult to do it piecemeal. It has to be done all at once.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gafredo?
How many floors is the building?
I'm sorry.
How many stories?
Stories, there's 4 stories, including a basement. So there would be 5 in essence, but there's 4 stories. Each story is roughly 140,000 square feet footprint. It's 630,000 square feet thereabouts.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Reapman, you mentioned for the last 25 years, you've used it as a logistics property with, is it 50 or 60 trucks coming in and out on a daily basis?
That was, I'm sorry, we operated it for about 25 years.
Okay.
The last 10 years was not used as extensively. Our major tenants moved, relocated up to New York State. And we, at the same time, had a developer interested in buying the property to convert it to residential. So that whatever our commercial industrial customers left while we were preparing for a residential conversion of that property. Unfortunately, about 10 years ago, the recession hit and financing dried up for that kind of a property. But we did use the property until actually January of this year, a portion of it, small portion, as a warehouse distribution area. And if I may answer to your question also, in order to do that, we had to do some upgrades to the property in order for Wilson Borough to issue a certificate of occupancy. We had to upgrade all the sprinkler systems and windows and things like that. Okay.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, comments or questions from the public? Mr. Barron?
Steve Barron, Director of Fiscal Affairs, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. I rise today to answer your question, Mr. Cusick. I realized I failed to do so yesterday. You asked me about property taxes and this specific building. So, Portnoy Law Associates collects the school taxes for Wilson Borough. In the public record, there is approximately $364,000 of school taxes owed. Not quite sure what those years are, and not sure if any taxes still sit with Portnoy, yet to be sent to put a lien on the property or a levy on the property to the courthouse here. So I don't exactly know what years those cover, but that is the total amount that is in the courthouse right now. For borough and county taxes, the borough collects all their own current year taxes, okay? So for 2022, I do not know if those taxes have been paid yet. I would suspect no, because the borough taxes for 2021 are still owed. That being said, all of 2020 is paid off. Mr. Reedman has paid his taxes through 2020, and 2021, as of the end of this year, would force the property to sale. My guess is, as in years prior, he will come in and set up a payment arrangement. Since he meets his payment arrangement by law, he is allowed to set up a new one, and we would do that for him for the 2021 taxes as of December. The 2022 taxes are currently in the penalty period right now because we're at that point of the year. So, in penalties and interest for the year 2021, Mr. Reedman and the property itself owes $45,598.99. So if they would come in today to pay off the 2021 taxes, that is what would be owed. Now we're closed, so tomorrow, if they come in, that is what would be owed.
That's for the borough.
That's for the borough and the county together, combined. The borough, it's $31,505.74, and for the county, it's $14,093.25. And for the current year with the penalties and interest that's owed, I believe there was a little bit of an extra payment into 2021 crediting the account, but the county for this year is owed $15,142.62, the 2022 taxes. But those are not delinquent yet because we are still in the 2022 tax year. Hopefully that answers your question. So there's approximately between $400,000 and $450,000 in taxes owed.
So the ones for the school district are not delinquent then?
No, they're collected by Portnoy. Portnoy runs through a whole legal process. They work with the school district. They don't share the information on payment arrangements they set up, whether or not there's an agreement not to take the property to sale or force the sale. We don't do the collection for them. For Wilson Borough, the county does the collection, and we take the properties to sale after the 2 years. We start the process to do the tax claim sale. If there is a delinquency sale, we take it to sale right away once that 2 years is up. We follow the laws, and as long as the property is levied, the person is given proper notice, accepts notice, then we can take it to sheriff's sale, or tax sale, I'm sorry.
Okay. Before this property could change hands, do the property taxes have to be satisfied?
I would assume, I'm not an expert on this, but to give free and clear title, I would assume at least the past due taxes would need to be paid off so the person gets a clean slate, yes. Not to say who would pay those taxes, that's settled across the table between the seller and the purchaser.
Thank you.
That's all I had for council, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Questions or comments from the public?
May I?
No, someone's coming.
I'm sorry.
Someone else is recognized.
Hello again. Happy to dive into the tax piece also, since I think you should have copies of the municipal liens in the packets that were distributed before. Good evening again, Armando Moritz Pelican, 1945 Lehigh Street, Wilson Borough. You have copies of my testimony as well, so apologies if I run a little long. I wanted to make sure that I got all the content in within the 5 minutes. I wanted to spend my testimony both responding to some of the revisionism that was argued 2 weeks ago, but also completing the argument that began over 3 months ago when Nick Sapatzeris first came to Northampton County Council, and which, regardless of which reality you're ascribing to, the conclusion is the same. So I hope you'll follow me on this intellectual journey. According to Wilson Borough Solicitor Margul, the council should only be considering the site when they are weighing this letter resolution, not, as he put it, quote, as to the use and not as to the applicant, end quote. Given that there were 2 presentations made by a potential buyer to this body and over a half dozen instances of said buyer stating his desired use for this site, this may sound like that scene from The Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. But in fairness, let's consider this perspective. Let us consider only the site. The Dixie Cup has been a beneficiary of multiple attempts at redevelopment. According to Wilson Borough's own ordinances, the site received a tax increment district designation on November 27th, 2006. The site continued to be underutilized. According to the Morning Call, the site received Keystone Opportunity Zone designation in 2012. The site continued to be underutilized. I bring up these points to ask a simple question. If these benefits and the countless attempts to redevelop the Dixie Cup site all failed, why should anyone believe that Alerta will be any different? Furthermore, if we're not considering any potential buyers or end uses, I have to ask, what's the rush in considering this application right now? Additionally, if we consider only the site, and following up on the previous points that were raised, we can very easily see that the site is over $400,000 behind on school, borough, and county taxes. There is also a pending case by the Borough of Wilson. I appreciate the concern about tax revenue for our neighborhoods, but considering a 10-year tax benefit for a site that's 4 years behind on its taxes is an outrageous insult to all taxpayers. If we're going to be serious about tax revenues, we should start by collecting what we are owed, not potentially waiving a site's obligations for a decade. Finally, if we continue to consider only the site, then I have to ask, where was the borough's presentation on this LRTA? If we're not considering Mr. Sapatsaris' presentations on May 5th or June 2nd, since they focus largely on his desired end use, when was the county council ever given a presentation on this LRTA? Was one ever made by the borough, by the current property owner? Unless I missed something, no such presentation was ever made, which begs the question, why is the council even considering this LRTA at all? Now, I know several of you are unmoved by this argument that we should ignore the end use or potential buyer's plans, but in order for us to depart from this argument that Mr. Heckman on the phone rightfully called, quote, legalese, we need to consider one last question. Why did the LRTA application come up when it did? As we all know, Nick Sapatsaris came to County Council on May 5th to request a LRTA. He repeated this request on June 2nd. On July 21st, Wilson Mayor Barrett indicated that he had been involved in conversations with this potential buyer since January. If that is the case, why did no one, either Mr. Barrett, Mr. Reedman, Mr. Sapatsaris, or Mr. Margul, contact the County Council before May? What we've had instead is a revolving door of speakers attempting to shift the narrative on this issue. Meanwhile, you've all asked Mr. Sapatsaris questions at both May 5th and June 2nd meetings and have been expected to approve a LRTA without getting any answers. I spoke 2 weeks ago about my expertise in community and economic development. I've always looked at policy decisions for the impact that they have on the short and long term, and I invite you to consider the precedent being set by potentially approving this LRTA. If you accept Mr. Margul's argument and vote in favor, you are voting to approve a LRTA to a site that is $400,000 behind on school, borough, and county taxes and has failed on multiple occasions to utilize tax benefits and development resources. In essence, a property owner can get multiple tax benefits over decades, do nothing with the property, fall behind on maintenance and paying taxes, and then secure a tax benefit for a site he has failed to physically or financially maintain. Is that the precedent that this council wants to set? And if you would reject Mr. Margul's argument and vote in favor, all the above is still true. Additionally, you would be voting to approve a LRTA that will benefit a specific buyer who has strong-armed the council, disappeared for months, and refused to answer any of your questions. And he still gets rewarded with a standard LRTA after attempting to quietly and quickly secure one of the most egregiously generous LRTA several of you have ever seen. Is this the precedent that the council wants to set? Whether you're outraged by the hundreds of thousands of dollars owed to the school, borough, and county, frustrated by the lack of response from Mr. Sapatsaris, or you're bothered by the egregiously sloppy way that this whole process has played out, you can vote to reject this LRTA. I'm encouraged by several members who said here 2 weeks ago that they're willing to get this right. The only way to do that is to vote no. Thank you, and I welcome your questions at this time.
Are there any questions at this time? Mr. Myers.
Is there at any point, how do I put this? Is this building under contract with anybody?
I wouldn't know. I'm not the owner.
That's just to you or Mr. Reedman or anybody else? Because the question was asked 2 weeks ago if there is a contract with a buyer. We did not get an answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good question worth answering. But again, I think that regardless of what's going on with, whether we're considering the use, not considering the use, I think that also you all have plenty of experience considering LRTA in the past. And frankly, the idea that we're going to change the narrative and not think about the site, not think about the buyer, not think about the use, after that has been part of the conversation up to this point, is pretty problematic. And I would also just, again, if we do want to just talk about the site, I did include copies in the packets that you all should have received, where there is a fact that there is a developer who is willing to buy this site without a tax benefit. I forget which member had said this 2 weeks ago, but they'd said, we need to approve LRTA so we can make a development happen. That's demonstrably not true anymore. A developer has offered to buy the site. The offer was rejected, but that's the reality of the situation. Additionally, we want to talk about tax revenues. $400,000 in tax revenues are owed right now, and they are from 4 years ago. And if you want to look at the dates, I think I highlighted them as well. One of them, I think, is from 2021, and I think it was actually filed a year ago today. So if we want to think about all the taxes that are owed, I think that should also be part of the conversation.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I respond? Mr. Myers, you asked a question, is there an agreement? That agreement has expired. I will tell you that we had planned on a settlement, contingent in some degree on the approval of the LRTA that was before you a couple weeks ago, at which time the settlement would have covered every tax that is owed, plus transfer taxes and everything else that was all factored in. In the last 7 years, we've paid to the school district, the county, and the municipality $491,000 in taxes. We will be paying another $100,000 by the end of the year.
Sir, may I ask a clarifying question? You said you'll be paying another $100,000 by the end of the year. Is that because you're under some agreement to pay or some kind of?
We have had worked out agreements with the county on the Tax Claim Bureau, and Mr. Barron indicated that we've met all those requirements. In fact, when the dates were set, we accelerated the payments so that they were all made in accordance with the installment payment plans that were approved by the county. With respect to the school district, we have worked very closely with Portnoy to work out payment structures and plans.
And so by the end of the year, what year's taxes will be satisfied, 2020 or 2021?
I don't have that date. Whatever it is, it will be covered. I think it's 21, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
If that's critical, I can certainly get that to you.
Any other questions? Mr. Myers?
Madam President, can I ask the solicitor, this LRTA is in front of us, does it meet the standards that we've done in the past?
You know that the initial submission was tabled. This was drafted to be consistent with prior considerations by council. The fee structure was changed, the term was changed. As you know, the initial submission could have been as long as 14 years with a 5-year grace period. That was unlike anything we have ever considered before. As a result of that, I drafted this ordinance that was introduced at the last meeting.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council for Mr. Reedman? Are there any other comments or questions from the public? State your name, please.
Hello. Don't need it talking in my chest. Name's John Burke. I live at 1807 Lehigh Street in Wilson Borough. I'm also the Wilson Borough Council President. After the last meeting, I felt it was important for me to address some statements that were made. I spoke with Mayor Barrett. However, he's not here tonight. He actually had surgery, and he's at home resting, and he told me to do this, so hi, Don. So as you noticed at the last hearing, the borough remained quiet. You know, we allowed our solicitor to speak, but we as a borough decided to remain quiet. And despite what we did or didn't do, I would like to address that at this time. First off, I was made aware that on Friday, July 22nd, the day after the LRTA was introduced, there was a borough resident who was having breakfast over at Billy's downtown in Easton. and he overheard two of your council members speaking about this. And the conversation that he heard wasn't polite. They were not in favor of the LRTA, and they frankly called us desperate. I wanted to say this: we are not desperate. We have no outstanding debt, but at the moment, we don't have the revenue to take on a project this big. Another topic from that conversation was that the suggestion that the developer had employees sign non-disclosure agreements and that they are shady and they buy off local officials. We told this person where we heard the story from that he may have misheard, that this wasn't accurate, but then when Councilperson Zirinsky made the comment about the non-disclosure agreements during the meeting, it was disheartening to think that that would just be talked about in public. So, just because we're not in just because it wasn't in Wilson doesn't mean there's not Wilson people around. The conversation was brought to my attention, and we didn't say anything purposely because we didn't want to think that comments like that would be made by people we respect, or even at all. I'm still hoping that this isn't the case. So, and then there was questions about the borough that I wanted to address also. Councilman Lott asked why we have not contacted the county about this LRTA or the building, and the answer to that is we have. As you know, last year, Mayor Barrett came in to discuss a hotel tax grant for our centennial celebration, which we are grateful that you did. And at the time, we were introduced to Mark Hartney and the county's economic development team. At that time, the discussion to see progress happening to the Dixie building was very positive. And we'd like to see it, see this albatross for the county, the borough, we want to see it thrive. I think that's the ultimate goal in the end. In November 2021, we started reaching out to these individuals and tried several times to talk about the property. Between our mayor, my borough manager, our solicitor, we've contacted the county, Mr. Barron, Executive McClure, and on most occasions, we did not receive a response. So, and I do have paperwork that states when they were contacted and the different information regarding those conversations. To say that we came to the county and this was, according to Mr. Lott, we bullied you into approving this LRTA is absolutely not true. We tried to reach out to you and we haven't gotten the feedback that we deserve. Next, why hasn't our code officials done anything to the building? Well, we have. Mr. Chapaquelin, I hope I said that right. He mentioned about the litigation we have on the property. Since I came in the council in 2018, our main purpose was to improve the building. We wanted to make sure that this building was going to thrive and that it's better than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. We've ramped up code, in the hopes to improve the movement on the building. But when, you have a bunch of, what's the word I'm trying to look for? I'm going to skip that part at the moment. When you have, all right, I got it. When you have a lot of things going against you, it's kind of hard to, make full strides until something starts moving. And we were kind of hoping this LRTA would be the start of it. And I'm not talking county LRTA, I'm talking our LRTA. The next question was about condemning the building. If we condemn the building, who would own the building? We would. And that isn't an option. This would put burden on the taxpayers, and right now we're one of the highest tax municipalities in the county. It's a fact. With 8,259 people in 1.1 square miles, we are we have one of the highest amount of people per square mile in the entire valley. We don't have much room to develop. So instead, we have to repurpose. In 2020, we lost about 20 businesses because of the pandemic. We received $800,000 from the American Relief Plan, but that can only go so far. And at the last meeting, it was also discussed about, the LRTA, what it entails. When you establish LRTAs, LRTA areas along with the city of Easton, you've added more areas. You started with the areas in 2018 and more areas in 2021. The LRTA terminology, when you read it, doesn't state what the purpose is for all of them. Each one has a specific purpose. My last count for Easton is that there's 82 parcels a part of the LRTA. We're talking about one. Up until July 14, 2021, boroughs weren't allowed to have redevelopment authorities. So we're kind of going in as feet first. First time we're doing it. So I'm going to skip down here on my thing because I realize I'm rambling now. Like I said, we're over 1 square mile. And the fact that we really haven't had much business development, residential development in 20, 30, 40 years, it concerns me. You know, and the fact that we've lost so many businesses, lost so many big businesses, it concerns me. You know, I'm not saying that this LRTA is the most optimal for the building, but it is one of the best options. Because Act 76, it says, you know, it authorizes local taxing authorities to provide for tax exemptions for certain deteriorated industrial, commercial, and other business properties, and for new construction in deteriorated areas of economic depressed communities. I think the Dixie Building meets every one of those standards. Not one word about what the use is. It's got to, the building has to be redeveloped. End of story. Last thing I want to leave, at our last council meeting for the Borough of Wilson, I opened up with a statement, and it's, we need to do a better job. That's us at the Borough of Wilson, you as the county, the public. We all need to do a better job. Because, I mean, I've only been doing this for a little over 4 years. This is my first big project I've ever seen. I've never done this before in my life. But at the same time, you guys have done this multiple times. I mean, honestly, we should be reaching out to you sooner. We haven't. But at the same time, you haven't reached out to us and say, well, what's going on with the building? Not once. It's on both ends. It's a give and take. And I honestly think we need to do a better job. And I'm going to leave you with this. You know, we like to see this project progress. And we'd like to see it with your help, not despite of you. We want to see this work together. We want to see the council on board, or the county on board. School district and borough are already on board because they'd like to see this happen. And I'll take any questions you may have. Thank you.
My first question is, the information you indicated in your packet, is that to be distributed to us? Or
I have it, so, I mean, I only have one copy of each, but you can certainly
please
do.
give it to Ms. Sheffinsky so she can make copies for us?
And then also, I have pictures here of the Dixie Building, so you can see inside when we, there's something in here about when we went through the Dixie Building and checked out all the improprieties and everything that needed to be fixed, so they're all pictures right here for you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions? Mr. Myers.
I have to disagree with you that nobody in this council hasn't spoken to you folks. I've been in contact with Mayor Barrett on several occasions. He's called out and reached out to me, and we've had conversations. As for the rest of the council, I can't speak for them, but we have spoken on this subject quite often, so.
And before you continue, I'd like to apologize if you have.
Okay, just wanted to make the record clear, because we've spoken. I'm your representative, and he's reached out to me on several occasions. So, yeah. And the building is in disarray. I can look at it every day I go to practice.
Mr. Gofredo. I'm sorry, Mr. Gofredo.
How you doing? Mr. Berg, one of my major concerns with granting a tax break for the redevelopment of the building is that there's nothing, at least for my solicitor, there's nothing in the LRTA saying that we could give the tax break and then they could demolish the building and build whatever they want because the LRTA is tied to the property. Is that a concern that you share?
Honestly, not really, because if the building was going to be torn down, it would have been torn down already. I really do wholeheartedly believe that. We went into, I mean, I shouldn't say we, my personal thought process when coming to it is that if the LRTA passes and we get a developer that's going to redevelop it, I mean, they could do practically whatever they want because the one thing we need is business. I mean, whether that be retail, that would be distributing, that'd be office space. We need something in that building because it's sad when you're stuck between two high schools and there's nothing going on there.
So everybody seems to have an opinion about the warehouse proliferation going on, and all these buildings look the same. They're very, drab. And the Dixie Cup property obviously has character, it's got history, and that's why I was initially very much in favor of hearing about this proposal. But I would be extremely disheartened to see that we give a tax break to a building that, for all intents and purposes, we intend to see be renovated, and then for it to be knocked down. I understand your position as a borough councilman having to attract revenue and jobs, and that's another big reason why I would like to support this. The lack of clarity, and then obviously the personalities and everything, it's making it a very difficult situation to look at this from just the fact standpoint. But as far as the facts go, that's the biggest concerning point for me. The fact that there's nothing stating that this building can't just be torn down, and then another, warehouse like all the other ones that we're seeing all over the place could be plopped right in the middle of Wilson.
I can completely understand that. My answer to that, though, is that if you're worried that there's going to be a warehouse put in there, when have you seen a 9-acre warehouse? Just not going to happen.
I agree.
So that was one of our concerns. If we were worried that it was going to be completely warehousing, there's no way none of us would have gone with that, because there's no. I mean, I don't know any 4-story warehouse, honestly. So yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address council from the public, or any questions? Okay, we'll close the public portion of this and open it up to council discussion. Is there anyone from council who'd like to begin discussing this or has any questions for each other? Mr. Cusick.
Yeah, I have a couple things. I was encouraged initially when this came before us. I think that certainly this site is worthy of a tax break, and in fact, I've supported 2 others. I was here when the TIF was brought forward. I supported that. I was here when the KOZ was put forward. Supported that. This LERTA, I think this is an appropriate site for a LERTA. And I'm starting to run out of vowels here. The problem that I have, though, is that how do I justify giving a tax break to someone who seems to have created one of their own by not paying the taxes on time? And I'm in a unique situation here. I believe I'm the only one that's a taxpayer in the Wilson Area School District. I don't represent Wilson Borough, but personally, I do pay taxes there. And it troubles me when I see that my school district is short $384,000. That's a lot of money. So for me, while I do believe that this is a worthy site for Alerta, I simply cannot overlook the tax situation that's involved. So my thoughts are that until we have either an agreement of sale or the taxes are paid, I just simply can't move forward on this. For any other contract that the county has, we have a requirement that the contractee be up to date on their county taxes, and this contradicts that, and I'm struggling with squaring that away. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone on the phone? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Myers, go ahead.
It's awfully funny that the 2 people who are speaking up are the ones who sponsored this. And the strange thing about it is, I couldn't have said it any better than what you said. We have an obligation our taxes be paid to do whatever it is we need to do. And when I saw this in the morning call, my head started spinning because I truly want to see this project go through. We're talking 10 blocks. And this school district is owed $380,000. There's not a lot that gets by our eyes and our ears, but this one here hit me right in the gut, and it makes me extremely sad that as much as I want to see this, and when the developer came here, a few months back and showed us what he wanted to do, and, I need this, hold up, take time, smell of coffee, to come to find out that we're in the rear. And as much as I want to support this, I'm having a very difficult time saying I'm going along with this, because it truly hurts the students of Wilson High School. It really hurts the people of Wilson Borough that they can't get things done because they're owed close to $500,000 in back taxes. And no matter what we do, those back taxes are going to show. And that's why I asked the question, is there agreement? Without an agreement, as a council, we can't go forward.
Any other questions or comments from council? Mr. Cusick?
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to table this.
Motion to table, is there a second?
Why table it?
Fails for lack of a second. Any other discussion from council on this matter? Mr. Brown?
I respect Mr. Myers and Mr. Cusick. You sponsored the LRTA. You're heavily invested in Wilson Borough. School taxes and the outstanding tax, I don't disagree in principle. But let's take it one step forward and we table this and we don't provide the incentive for the building to be sold or to be redeveloped. The school district is going to be in exactly the same position it is. For whatever reason, the owner is on a payment plan for the taxes, so 22, you can predict probably going forward, a continuation. So really, what's in the best interest of the very students you're talking about, the residents of the borough? And I get it. If there was some out where these taxes would not be brought forth at the transaction of the property, but all of those kind of legal protections, I'm sure, will be put in place by the school district, the county, and the borough themselves. So I would ask you to take a little longer look. And the 10 years that the LRTA would be, I think, as rewritten, where does that leave the school district 5 or 10 years from now? Much better off. The building would be redeveloped. They'd be collecting the full value, which I would assume would be slightly larger than the current valuation of the property once it's redeveloped. So I think that would be a consideration that I would have this body take a look at to counterpoint the taxes. I like taxes paid, I like them collected and such, but I think it's a little bit of a short-sighted perspective, and I'd ask you to take a little bit longer view on that.
Thank you. Ms. Zirinsky?
I just wanted to address two things. Thank you. I think at the last meeting, Mr. Reedman had spoke about not being able to answer Carrie Meyer's question about whether or not there was an agreement. He indicated that he was not at liberty to discuss it or say anything. To me, that is a non-disclosure agreement, and that was my reference at that meeting. If that is not the case, then so be it. But that was what I meant. The other thing is that I think that if this warranted a LRTA, there would not be a buyer willing to have a property, to buy the property without the LRTA. And if we grant a LRTA with a buyer on tap who's willing to pay the taxes, then I think that we're doing a disservice in allowing this LRTA to go through because we're deferring 10 years of taxes. That's revenue that could be coming to the county. So knowing that there are, or at least one buyer, possibly more buyers out there who would purchase this building without a LRTA, I feel like we need to favor the taxpayers and allow that to generate revenue.
Mr. Heckman or Mr. Lott, do you have any questions or discussion points?
No.
Okay.
Well, I have, as everyone has heard that listened to this, I have several issues. But the one that is really in the front of it right now is the taxes. If you go to the LRTA ordinance and you read the default clause on it, it states there that you must not be delinquent in taxes. I mean, so it's right in the letter on the default. Now, I realize it doesn't go into effect at a certain time, and maybe he'll have it paid up by then. But the fact of the matter is they wrote it in there because they did not want to give a tax break to somebody that's not paying their taxes. And it just makes sense out of fairness to all the taxpayers. So, you know, that is a major issue on top of any other, how this whole process went through. But so, of course, I won't be supporting this. I'd like to see the taxes paid up, and then, you know, maybe at that time it's a different owner, or, you know, we can take another look at it. Taxes are paid up on this place. I think it's
Did he get cut off?
Did you get cut off?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, hard to. Any other comments from the dais? I just have a few. Mr. Burke left, I believe. I feel, yeah, or maybe, oh, is he? I want to say thank you for your comments, and I appreciate what you said. We don't need to have a dialogue, but it raised some flags for me, and it just, unfortunately, highlights my concern about this project from the beginning. I don't have the career of Mr. Heckman or Mr. Cusick and all their alphabet expertise, but the few alerts that I've been able to grant have been pretty seamless and easy. Slam dunk. Property needs it, taxes are paid, seems like a good economic opportunity, it's done. My concern is, and you raised it, can't wait to see what's in that packet, is that we have been asking up here for months, where the heck did this come from? Where did this start? And we have never gotten an answer till tonight with you. So I appreciate your honesty. And I am sick and tired of council being left in the dark all the time. So you're right, we should do better. So in the future, if we do vote this down, and you're able to kind of resurrect this in any other form, please include us in the beginning conversations, because I realize that we're checks and balances, but we're budgetary, and this is our job. So to wait until the 11th hour to bring us in and say, here it is, hurry up, vote this way or vote that way, really disturbs me. Because there's 9 intelligent people that sit up here and work together and really want to do right by the citizens of this county. And so I feel a little sideswiped in this whole thing, and it has been a nasty, messy process since the beginning that I've heard of it. So I'm probably not going to support it for the shabbiness of the entire process, and I'm hoping that we could start all over, if there is a buyer, when the taxes get paid, and do this as well as we've done the other ones. But please, I want my colleagues in the Borough of Wilson not to take this as a personal insult, because I don't believe that you or your citizens are at fault in this in any way. I don't, but I don't know how else to say it except yuck. And if there's no other comments, then I'd like to call for the vote.
Mr. Myers.
Can I hold off the last, please?
Mr. Kuzic.
No.
Wait, Mr. Heckman?
No.
Oh, wait, she didn't ask your vote. I just heard a chirp. I'm sorry.
Mr. Giovanni.
No.
Mr. Gofredo.
No.
Mr. Heckman.
No.
Mr. Lott.
No.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
No.
Ms. Zirinsky.
No.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
No.
Fails by a vote of 1 to 8.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience with this process. I appreciate everyone's diligence with this. Moving on to the second hearing, which is a public hearing of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending the 2022 Northampton County Budget, Fiscal Affairs, Information Services, Balancing the Budget, ARP, Approved Projects, Department of Public Works, P3 Bridges. Mr. Myers and myself introduced this ordinance at the August 4th, 2022 meeting. Are there any questions or comments from the public? Any questions or comments or discussion from council? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a question, is Mr. Barron?
Mr. Barron is here and is being called.
Okay, the P3 bridges, are those ones we've eliminated, revised? Could you tell us about that? I don't think we went over this.
So there is a P3, there was a P3 settlement that came through the GPA. That settlement requires additional payment that was not budgeted for in the settlement
Excuse me,
agreement.
could we close the back door so I could hear Mr. Baer?
So
Thank you.
that is why that is in the budget amendment. So we need that additional money to honor our part of the settlement that was discussed with council. So we're putting that into the budget.
Okay, so this will wrap up the P3 from a fiscal standpoint?
No, because there's still, there are still payments to be made in the maintenance period and stuff like that. And I believe there might be one more year, which you'll see in the budget. And we'll go over that payment schedule and how the new payment schedule looks in the budget. But based on the settlement, this is what is required for 2021, or yeah, we're in 2021. Or no, 2022, I'm sorry. So this is the additional money that we need for 2022 to honor that agreement that the GPA set in place.
Okay, did this involve the Little Creek Road, was that?
No.
No.
Mr. Bridge is here, Mr.
Mr. Bridges is
As opposed to Mr. Bridge Emili, as opposed to Mr. Bridge Greg Kuklinski from Benish, but one of the three bridges of the P3 is here. If he wants to articulate.
Yeah, if you could just tell us what the settlement is and why we're voting.
I don't know that we ever did discuss it with council, did we?
The settlement is actually a good deal longer than that, and I would have to give you the full layout from notes. I'm not prepared to give you that information at this point, but this part of the settlement here was part of the element that we were removing the 8 bridges that were found to be unnecessary to be removed, or some bridges that, as we've had this discussion many times, we were able to get to a point where we received a dollar for dollar credit for the bridges that were not being built. The schedule of the bridge project has expanded dramatically. That is to say, the bridges were supposed to be done this past year. And we are now into, like this year, we should not still be doing the bridge on Little Creek Road. So with that being the case, there is still probably 3 years left of bridge construction, and this kind of spread out our circumstances for the payments as well. And there was an element of the P3 that provided them finance payments to float the cost of this bridge project. And we've kind of compacted that because of the bridges that were taken out of the project.
Okay, do you know the ones that were taken out, or can you get that to us?
Most certainly.
I can probably get that for you after the meeting. I think they're the same ones that have been, there are 8 bridges, correct?
There are 8
There were
bridges.
8 in consideration.
Starting off of
I
Bridge
have that.
15,
I can
yeah.
share that with you.
There were 3 bridges on Little Creek Road specifically that were taken
The
out.
reason why I asked, because we had folks from up there that came to several of our meetings.
Sure.
Asking about it. So
And from
that-
the very onset, those are the bridges that we looked at right after Bridge 15 was taken out of the project. So we addressed the bridges that were not structurally deficient, but rather just single lane bridges. And some of those being concrete arch bridges, specifically 79, 76 and 43, those will only last another 60 or 70 years in their current circumstances, so those were taken out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Call for the vote?
Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner?
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mr. Lott?
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Yes. Mr. Kuzic?
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni?
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have public hearing of an ordinance entitled, an ordinance of the County Council of Northampton County authorizing the purchase and donation of approximately 58.707 acres of real property by the County of Northampton in Allen Township, Pennsylvania, from Paul Mauser and Wazel Mauser. Ms. Zirinsky and Giovanni introduced this ordinance at the August 4th, 2022 meeting. At the last meeting, misinformation was presented regarding the acreage, so the ordinance will have to be amended to reflect 42 acres. May I have someone make the motion to do this
I'll
amendment?
make the motion for the
Ms.
amendment.
Zirinsky, thank you. May I have a second? Who said it?
G.
Thank you. Voting on the amendment, call for the vote.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Lot.
He said yes, you could hardly hear him.
Mr. Myers.
Yep.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Brown. Yes. Motion passes by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions or comments from the public regarding the amended ordinance?
Oh.
Any discussion on council regarding the amended ordinance? Yes, Ms. Zirinsky.
I just want to make sure that we understand that it's at 48 acres because a portion of the
42.
I mean, 42
42.
part, 40, I'm sorry, it's getting late. It's not late, it's just been a long day. So the 42 represents the land that's being awarded tonight through here, but there's 16 acres adjacent that will be used as a family farm. So that is what was included in the entire 58 acres by mistake, and we discussed this at the Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee meeting today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other? Yes, sir.
Just would like to recognize the Mausers because they were here for the energy meeting, but we didn't get to really recognize them and thank them for the donated land, or at least a portion of the land was, a considerable amount of it was donated by them, so
You're here.
thank you.
Call for the vote on the amended ordinance.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the public hearing of an ordinance entitled, "An Ordinance of the County Council of Northampton County Authorizing the Operation and Management Lease Agreement by the County of Northampton and First Regional Compost Authority in East Allen Township, Pennsylvania." Mr. Myers and Cusick introduced this ordinance on August 4th, 2022 meeting. Are there any questions or comments from the public regarding this matter? Hearing and seeing none. Is there any discussion regarding this matter?
You hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Did you want to say something other than that?
No, my phone's getting funky. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, thank you. Now that we've acknowledged Mr. Heckman's presence and ability to hear, is there any discussion regarding this matter? Call for the vote.
Yeah, good. It's okay.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Is there any other old business to discuss? Hearing and seeing none, let's introduce new business in the introduction of an ordinance entitled, "An Ordinance of the Northampton County Council Authorizing the County of Northampton, Eastern Pennsylvania to lease approximately 2,689 rentable square feet of space at 1901 Hay Terrace Suites, UL1, UL3, and UL5, third floor, Easton, Pennsylvania, from KMJV LLC." Would someone please
I will
sponsor this?
sponsor.
Mr. Myers, and a second.
Second.
Mr. Giovanni. Public hearing, debate, and possible vote will be held at the September 1st, 2022 meeting. Next, we have the introduction of an ordinance entitled, "An Ordinance of the Northampton County Council, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, requiring in accordance with Act 57 of 2022, the Northampton County Tax Collectors and Northampton County Tax Claim Bureau, beginning January 1st, 2023, to waive all additional charges for real estate taxes if the taxpayer complies with all the requirements as set forth herein, defining terms, providing for severability, repealer, and effective date." Would someone please sponsor this ordinance?
I'll second, whatever you want. Got it.
And the public hearing, debate, and possible vote will be held at the September 1st, 2022 meeting. Next, we have the consideration of county executives' appointment and reappointment resolution, Area Agency on Aging Advisory Board, Drug and Alcohol Advisory Board. Mr. Giovanni, will you introduce the resolution?
Yes, Madam President, I will. By Northampton County Council that the following individuals shall be confirmed in their appointment and reappointment as indicated hereafter. Area Aging of the Aging Advisory Board, Anne Marie Pinella, term to expire 7/1/24. The Drug Alcohol Advisory Board, appointment Christine Tenassi. Her term of expire is 6/30/24.
Thank you. Any discussion of this matter, of these appointees? This was discussed and reviewed at Personnel Committee yesterday. Call for the vote.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman. Ron. Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
I think that was Ron.
No, that was Kevin.
Oh,
Kevin.
okay.
We can't hear you, Mr. Heckman. Okay, move forward with that.
8-0 passes.
Okay. Passes by a vote of 8-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of personnel request resolution, Department of Court Administration. Mr. Giovanni, will you introduce the resolution?
Yes, Madam President, I will. Resolved by the Northampton County Council that one full-time position of Adult Probation Officer 1, pay grade CP-GR22-3C, salary $49,101 in the Department of Court Administration, Adult Probation, shall be upgraded to pay grade CP-GR22-5E, salary $53,461, effective the 19th day of August 2022. Resolved by the Northampton County Council that one full-time position of the DUI Probation Officer 1, pay grade CP-GR23-2B, salary $49,207 in the Department of Court Administration, DUI Probation, shall be upgraded to pay grade CP-GR23-4D, salary $53,565, effective the date 19th of August 2022.
That's great.
Thank you, and I'd like to also inform you, and you should have this at your desk for the folks on the phone. We have received 2 court orders with both appointees' names stating that they have been appointed to these positions.
There we go.
Yeah, that's right.
Do we even have to vote then? This is
Well,
a
yes,
court
because
order.
we have to we have to
Oh,
approve
okay.
the salaries.
Okay.
Oh, but in this court order,
We still got to approve.
We still have to approve it.
okay, just
You're the
checking.
money guy.
All right, I don't think,
Question, ma'am.
we're ratifying.
Wait,
Yes,
I
that's
believe
better.
I hear Mr. Lot?
Yes. My question would be, with this court order that I read earlier today, and the question is for our solicitor, if it gets voted down,
Yeah.
we vote these cases down, how does that jive with the court order? Do we need
It's
to?
perfunctory. This is just perfunctory.
If I may.
Please.
Ministerial, I think.
I was instructed as a young lawyer that when there is a court order, and if the court order says, put the jackass in the kitchen, you have 2 questions. Where's the jackass and where's the kitchen? You follow the court order literally and strictly, and if you don't like it, file a petition to change it. It is a court order and we respect it. There is a resolution pending before council for your consideration as drafted, and I suspect that we should vote on that.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Call for the vote.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman. Mr. Lot. I think that was wrong. Ron?
Whoever's on the phone, it's very hard to hear you.
Get closer.
Hello?
There you go.
Yes, that's Mr. Heckman.
Yes, right.
How do you vote?
Oh, my phone, yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Passes by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of longevity bonuses, Office of the District Attorney Resolution. Mr. Giovanni, will you introduce the resolution?
Yes, Madam President, I will. Whereas the Office of the District Attorney of Northampton County has, during past 20 months, experienced the loss of several of its experienced prosecutors, together with an unusual large increase in its caseload due to the combination of social and economic factors sweeping the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, generally and in Northampton County specifically. And whereas the Office of the District Attorney, like every other prosecutor's office throughout the Commonwealth, due to a significant decline in qualified applicants, has not yet replaced all of the departing experienced prosecutors so as to bring the office back to its full staff. And whereas the District Attorney of Northampton County seeks to fairly compensate his professional staff that has continued to handle this significant increase caseload for their dedication and increased workload burdens now extending far beyond their normal work parameters. And whereas Northampton County lags behind other counties in the number of attorneys and detectives for the number of cases the Office of the District Attorney has been handling. And whereas the 2022 budget for the District Attorney, as approved by County Council, is sufficient to cover the proposed additional compensation to all of the prosecutors who have taken on a significant additional caseload. Now therefore be it resolved that that Northampton County Council approves the payment of a one-time $2,000 incentive compensation to each of the 17 assistant district attorneys as identified by the district attorney from the 2022 district attorney's budget.
Thank you. Again, this was discussed yesterday at the Personnel Committee. Is there any discussion on this matter?
No.
Call for the vote.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Mr. Heckman.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Am I on?
Ron.
Am I on?
Yes.
This is very funny. What's your vote?
Phone is just going crazy.
Ron.
I'm here.
How about yes?
What's your vote on the DA?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Heckman said yes, the vote is.
I'm having flashbacks to Peg Ferraro.
Yes, flashbacks to that.
I know, that's what I was saying over here. Flash.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of waiver of second appraisal for Banarsik Preserve Resolution.
Banarsik.
Banarsik.
Yeah.
Ms. Zirinsky, will you introduce the resolution?
Tried really hard with that one. Whereas Northampton County Administrative Code, Section 13.14B provides that the county shall not purchase, sell, or lease real estate without first obtaining sealed appraisals from two professional real estate appraisers, whereas Administrative Code, Section 13.14B2 allows that provision to be waived when the purchase, sale, or lease of real estate does not justify the cost of their appraisals or is otherwise deemed unnecessary, whereas on August 12th, 2022, Northampton County was requested to waive the requirement for two sealed appraisals as required under Section 13.14B of the Administrative Code for the partial purchase and acceptance of the donation of approximately 42 acres, more or less, known as the Banarsik Preserve. parcel identifier K4 2640501. Located in Allen Township, Northampton County, Pennsylvania, from Paul Mauser and Wasil Mauser as a bargain sale for the purchase price of $225,000 and land donation valued at $675,000 at a unit cost of $20,000 per acre as a fee simple acquisition and acceptance of land donation of Northampton County's park system. Whereas the county obtained one professional appraisal which confirms a fair market value price commensurate with the sales price and donated value. The fair market value is consistent with other appraisals received and consistent with the comparison of local acquisition provided in the appraisal report. Therefore, a second appraisal is requested to be waived. Now therefore be it hereby ordained and enacted by the Northampton County Council that requirement for 2 sealed appraisals as required under Section 13.4B2 of the Administrative Code be waived for the county's purchase of the approximately 42 acres known as the Banarsik Preserve Parcel, identifier K4 2640501, located in Allen Township, Pennsylvania. We discussed this at the Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee today.
Thank you. Any discussion on the matter? Call for the vote.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Brown. Yes. Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thanks. Next, we have the consideration of an application for a livable landscape grant for Banarsik. Preserve Resolution. Ms. Zirinsky?
Now therefore, it is hereby resolved by the Northampton County Council. 1, the Northampton County Council hereby approves a grant application submission in the next grant round to the department for the Banarsik Preserve acquisition. The Northampton County Council authorizes the required matching funds through the Livable Landscapes Grant Program and OSI Environmentally Sensitive Fund. The Northampton County Council further authorizes the Northampton County Executive through the Office of the Northampton County Division of Parks and Recreation or his/her designee is authorized to take any and all steps necessary to administer and complete Northampton County's obligations in this project. 4, the signature page for grant application and grant agreement may be signed on behalf of the applicant by the official who, at the time of the signing, has the title of Superintendent of Parks and Recreation. 5, if this official signed the signature page for grant application and grant agreement prior to the passage of this resolution, this grant of authority applies retroactively to the date of signing. 6, if the applicant is awarded a grant, the signature page for a grant application and grant agreement signed by the above official will become the applicant grantee's executed signature page for the grant agreement, and the applicant/grantee will be bound by the grant agreement. 7, any amendment to the grant agreement may be signed on behalf of the grantee by the official who, at the time of the signing of the amendment, has the title specified in paragraph 2, and the grantee will be bound by the amendment. We also discussed this one in the EALU.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the matter? Call for the vote.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lott.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of Administrative Code Article 13 Contract Resolutions. First, Grace Industries. Mr. Cusick, will you introduce the resolution?
Thank you, Madam President. Whereas Northampton County Administrative Code, Article 13, Procurement and Disposition of County Property, Section 13.15, Contracts and Agreements, C2, requires approval of County Council for any contracts where costs are to be funded with money outside the county's general fund, such as those funded through bonded indebtedness. And whereas on July 27th, 2022, the Northampton County Council received a request from the county executive for county council to adopt a resolution endorsing a contract in the amount of $164,580.42, 80% state funded, $131,664.33, 20% county funded, $32,916.09 with Grace Industries via a PennDOT agreement for the expedited demolition of Bridge 15 Meadows Road in Lower Saucon Township. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county executive as set forth in the attached documentation to approve a contract with Grace Industries. I had to pause when it said expedited, Madam President, because this is something that council has been discussing for over a decade. So I appreciate the fact that it's moving forward.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this matter, which was discussed yesterday at Finance Committee? Call for the vote.
Why are we?
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lot. Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
No.
Mr. Brown.
I have my reasons.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8 to 1.
And next, we have Wilmer R. Schultz Incorporated, and Mr. Cusick, will you continue?
Thank you again, Madam President. Whereas on August 10th, 2022, the Northampton County Council received a request from the county executive for county council to adopt a resolution endorsing a contract in the amount of $321,750 with Wilmer R. Schultz Incorporated for Norbath Trail Improvements Phase 3 over a term of 4 months. Now therefore be it resolved that the Northampton County Council does hereby concur with the recommendation of the county executive as set forth in the attached documentation to approve a contract with Wilmer R. Schultz Incorporated.
Thank you. Any discussion on this matter? Call for the vote.
Mr. Kuzic.
Yes.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mr. Lot.
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Ms. Zirinsky.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9 to 0.
Thank you. Is there any other new business to discuss?
Hello?
Hello?
Someone's underwater.
So cut me a break.
Okay. Any council, I can't even speak. Any council committee reports?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we had the Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee meeting today. We discussed the presentation regarding the Banarsik Preserve and another presentation for the First Regional Compost Authority, as well as the discussion regarding the DCNR grant that we already did. There were several announcements. One is that Sherry Acevedo was nominated for her professional photography, and she got a grant, and she will have an exhibit at the Nature and Nurture Center. The opening reception is on September 10th, 1 to 4 p.m. There's also an Eastern PA Trails Summit, which will be at the State Theater and then various locations within the Lehigh Valley along the trails. That will be September 26th to the 28th, and you could register on the DNL website. Also, on Monday at 5:30 will be the waste management tour of the landfill. If you have not already registered, please do.
Thank you. Mr. Myers? Committee report? Yesterday's committee?
Oh, yes. Okay, so I had a moment of seniority. We had a committee meeting for capital improvements yesterday, and we got updates on the prison. We got updates on bridges and the work that was done at Graysdale. And we're moving right along, and everything should be fine.
Thank you. We also had Finance Committee yesterday. Fruits of our work were done this evening. And Mr. Heckman, do you want to give the personnel report, or should I?
You.
We had Personnel Committee report, and the fruits of our labors were taken care of this evening. Thank you, Mr. Heckman. Any other liaison reports? We'll start on this end. Mr. Cusick.
So last week, I had the opportunity to attend the CCAP Annual Conference with several of you. I had the opportunity to attend sessions on the fiduciary responsibility of pension boards and pension funds, mental health and jail populations, and a seminar on risk management given by our insurer, P Corp. And also during that conference, I had the opportunity to nominate the next District 6 representative to the CCAP board, Congratulations, landslide Lori Vorgo Hefner.
I wouldn't call
On
it a
taking that
landslide, but
seat.
thank you. Glad to fill your shoes. Any other liaison reports?
On Monday, I attended the Wildlands Conservancy meeting. It was the first meeting that we actually had in person for a long time, so we took a tour of the Wildlands Dorothy Ryder Pool Center, and we looked at the new infrastructure projects there, including the barn, the bridge, and the trails. And I also want to report that their capital campaign is going really well. They've raised $13.6 million of the $18.5 million that they are attempting to raise. I also attended today the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission Executive Committee meeting, along with Mr. McClure, and we discussed the anticipated budget. The positions that they currently have are about 20 positions that they're budgeted for. They currently have 17. They need to fill 4 vacancies. And we discussed the IT upgrades, the annual Lehigh Valley Awards Outlook, which will be on the 16th, mark your calendars, and the Sustainable Warehouse Forum, which will be on 9/23 at the Rockwell Science Center at Lafayette College. We also discussed 3 important aspects of the future Lehigh Valley that they're going to be focusing on, which includes transportation, broadband, greenhouse gas inventory, and we also discussed the Lehigh Valley passenger rail analysis and the first steps in that PennDOT-funded study that were announced yesterday.
Thank you. I think I just want to add to Mr. Cusick's report on the CCAP convention. There was a large voting block to revisit some of our platform items and revise some things. And one of the hotbed items was an attempt to repeal our support of Act 77. It was quite the discussion through the entire convention, and the final vote, all the platform items were passed with the exception of that one, which was defeated. I believe it was 112 to 63. So if you want to check out your email, the rest of them are available. The other thing is there is a call for committee membership, so any and all of you are welcome to apply to sit on any of the boards, and I believe the end of the month is the deadline. So you may want to consider if there's an area of interest you have to be included in that. And it's also in your email, and the nomination form is there. And any council clerk report?
Nothing.
Solicitor report?
Nothing.
And a motion to adjourn? Tom, second? Yep. Oh, it's like a routine. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.